Let me throw out an art. You spent months building your app, developer says it's ready, you submit it to the App Store, and it gets rejected. Or worse, it goes live, it crashes on half of your users, most of your first reviews are 1 stars. Things aren't looking good. This actually happens to a lot of first-time founders, especially when they first create their app, not because it's a bad idea, but because they didn't really understand what ready means. And so today I really want to go over 8 crucial things that I believe are necessary for you to do prior to you even considering getting it on the App Store from someone who has released and continues to release apps onto the App Store regularly. So the first one that I think everyone needs to understand is, what is your true MVP? What is your one problem? What is the one thing you're trying to solve? When you create an application, you should not be creating an application to serve everybody, right? Especially if you don't know your market or your true demographic yet. There's this belief that if you build out like the best app possible, people will come. But that's not true. Building the app is only part of the problem. The next set of problems come from having to make sure that it's ready for your users, that the users understand that it works well, and that they understand what you're trying to accomplish is done well in the first few seconds. It passes the App Store, and then it can go live with very little issue. You don't need to solve every problem. You need to solve one specific problem at the very, very beginning of your mobile app. And that's the one thing you should be focusing on. If you have 2 things, reconsider. The second thing, and I know this gets missed a lot, especially by first-time indie developers or by vibe coders who go out there and use tools like Lovable and don't understand very much what it means to continue past that. And the second thing is testing on a real device. There's a difference between testing on a simulator or emulator and testing on a physical device. When you test on an emulator, you're testing against the GPU that is on the MacBook or Mac Mini, or I guess whatever the computer is, but you can't track certain information like Bluetooth or GPS drift or any other unstable Wi-Fi stuff that you might see. Additionally, some of these simulators actually do a really bad job of displaying the keyboard. And so you'll go in and you'll hit like a text input, and because the keyboard doesn't pop up sometimes, you'll just type away on your keyboard for your computer, completely forget that. And then when a user uses it, you find out that the keyboard is actually covering half the screen and they can't even see what they're typing. So always test on a physical device. It's very crucial, especially since all of your users will be using a physical device. The third thing is App Store compliance. So many people walk into creating an app thinking it's easy. All you need to do is just create it and then just upload it to the store. It could not be more untrue. You still need to make sure you have compliance information. You're going to need to require a lot of metadata. If you decide to have in-app purchases, you need to go through the stores and make sure you have the correct information for that. If you target specific demographics, for example, children, you need to make sure that you're very compliant with that. If you are a healthcare company, they will check you for HIPAA as well. Apple is notorious for making sure that you follow rules not only that are regulated here in the US, but across the world. So if you are not setting yourself up for success in compliance with what Apple is saying, you're pretty much not setting yourself for success up at all. I like to say though, that if you're compliant with Apple, you're pretty much compliant with Google Play. I rarely find that I'm not compliant with Google Play if the App Store has already given me the thumbs up. And for the most part, both stores are very similar, so it's not like you have to worry about, oh, this store requires me this and this requires me that. In some cases, you might need to give a little bit more on one or the other, but it's not as big of a deal as some people might think. The next thing is definitely making sure that your app is checked on a multitude of different devices. Your goal as a developer, or I guess as an owner, is to make sure that it works on all the devices that you want to support. I once worked for a company where they decided it was a good idea to support literally every single device out there. As a result of it though, the biggest complainers of the mobile app were people who were using old Amazon Kindle tablets that didn't even really support the app very well to begin with. And so there were things we definitely needed to fix with this app to make it run better in general, because it was already super slow on faster devices like the newer Pro devices, but it was even worse on these Amazon Kindle devices. As a result of them not testing, we had to go back and truly figure out what exactly is their game plan. How do we fix this? How do we ensure that users are going to be happy with it? And how do we move forward with that? Eventually, we ended up deciding, and I let them know that we shouldn't be supporting every single device. There has to be a limit as to where your device limitation is and where your OS support is, because sometimes these lower tiered devices might be your bigger screamers, but you still need to progress, you still want to improve. If you're going to use the latest technology on your application, whether it be something up from the operating system or something from the physical hardware, you want to make sure that your app is dedicated and tested on that. But if you have a lot of these people that are testing on some of these mid-range devices and small devices, but you also want to support them, you need to make sure you're also testing them. And if you don't want to support them, that's fine, draw that line, but make sure that if you're really, really willing to have this giant list of people that you want to support, you've got to make sure you're testing on an array of different devices. Otherwise, you're going to be asking for a world of hurt. Okay. Another thing, privacy policies. Huge, huge thing in 2026. Apple and Google Play do require you to have a privacy policy, and if you have in-app purchases, a EULA, end user license agreement, to let them know of your in-app purchases within the application. Now, fortunately, there are a lot of free tools out there that allow you to get help with this. Theoretically, you could go out there and use a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude to help you make it. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend, if you do that way, to then go talk with a legal expert and ensure that that is actually safe and valid. Otherwise, I would recommend that you use one of these paid tools like Termly and see if that will satisfy what the App Store compliance is asking you for. I don't know if this is a big enough, maybe it's a bigger fear for me compared to others, but I don't ever want to be in a position where somebody does try to sue me and I'm not protected. So make sure you're protecting yourself with your privacy policy and your terms of conditions and user license agreements. Next, you need to implement basic analytics and crash testing from day one. One of the big issues that I find in a lot of mobile apps is when they come to me, they have all these features and they look nice, they've tested it for the happy path and they work perfectly fine as is, but they don't add any analytics or crashing tracking, and so they don't know how their users are actually using their mobile app. I have an app called the Resume app, and in it we added tracking specifically to see which screens people were using the most. We had 4 basic features that people were able to use, and we discovered that one of them was almost never touched. And obviously our resume cover letter stuff was touched all the time. So that made it really easy for me to go back and tell my team, hey, let's go ahead and see about maybe removing this. And that'll be something that we do here in the near future. But that analytics tracking will help you know where are your users actually spending the most time. The second thing along with that is Crashlytics. Firebase does a really good job of telling you what those crashes are. I think PostHog has something similar. I'm actually not too familiar with whether or not they do crashes, but you need to find a crash service because your app is going to fail. It's going to crash, it's going to break at some point, and you're going to want that information. One of the things I personally like about Firebase is it lets me to get more information specific to whether like the user's device, the user's operating system, which app version it's on, because maybe you're on version 2, but maybe a user hasn't updated in 6 months and they're still on version 1.5, and you just need to know where exactly that crash is happening, right? So the more information you can get, the better it is to make decisions long-term on where you need to put your priority. The last thing you want to do is put out a brand new feature while you have, a ton of crashes and people are saying we don't like it because we have all these crashes and then they don't adopt the new features. Make sure you are fixing those features, those bugs. You need to make sure you are fixing those bugs and ensuring that your users are going to be happy. Another thing, and this isn't as big, I think, for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people actually consider this when they're testing, even from a QA perspective, but interruption handling. So, for example, let's assume I'm using my music app, right? Whether it be like Apple Music or Spotify or whatever the case may be. What happens when I get a call? Or what should happen? Do we expect something to happen? There's an app that I worked on once that took in data, and if the app was interrupted at any point, if for whatever reason went backgrounded, even for a second, like the data would just not upload. So what would that mean in a case where something got interrupted unexpectedly? Maybe they got a notification and they got moved over to a different application. Well, if that data was important or if it was in mid-transit, you're accidentally going to break part of that flow. And so that's not another layer of security and data transfer that you're gonna have to worry about in that process. So I always recommend that you do stuff like that, where maybe you get a phone call or a video pops up or a push notification or anything that might make a user accidentally go into the background, so that you see what that is actually like. How does your app truly respond to those changes? As one goes and continues and tries to make an application, there's a lot more that really does come into play with this. I could definitely talk about this for hours and tell you like there are way more things, but I think these are some very basic things in today's market that you really need to be hitting on. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. And the last thing you want to do is you want to release an app, have a ton of people super excited about it, ready to download it, and then day one, people are just not liking it, they're not ready for it, they're not happy with it. It's okay to wait. There's this mentality, especially as developers, like myself, who just likes kind of pushing things out. Like there's this idea of that we just need to push it out as quickly as possible and just get it out there. Like that's not always 100% true. And there's even more so, like I've been speaking with a few entrepreneurs in the area where they believe that if they get it out first, then because they get it out first, their intellectual property won't get stolen, and they're the ones that are going to be in charge, or they're afraid of a competitor getting out there first. Okay, I get it. That's all reasonable. But if you release it too quickly and it's not a good app, it's not a good app. You don't want to push out a good app or a bad app. You don't want to push out a bad app. You want to push out a good app. And if that means you need to wait another month, fine. I promise you, you're going to be a lot happier if you wait and give yourself that opportunity, as opposed to shipping it out quickly and pushing out a bad application. And if you'd like to get more information on this, or if you think this is something that I could potentially help you with, please reach out to me. Link my company's website down below. Please feel free to reach out. And I would love to help you out with any service that you might need so that you create the best mobile application possible for not only your users, but for yourself. Remember, I tell this to a lot of people. If you are not happy with the application, if you wouldn't use your application, then there's a pretty good chance other people are not going to be happy and wouldn't want to use your application. And you don't want that. So please contact me and I'll see how I can help.